Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Conservative Millennial, a channel where we cover politics from a conservative millennial's viewpoint. And the election is almost here. Election day is tomorrow, so I figured we would just go over the last minute polls to see what we can expect, what we can hope for. So, as you can see, Trump has a pretty big lead in all of the battleground states except for Wisconsin, Michigan, and North Carolina. He's got 2.5 in Arizona, a point in Nevada, 1.5 in North Carolina, 0.9 in Georgia. So most of those are safely for Trump. So we mainly need to look at the three Rust Belt states. So first of all, looking at Wisconsin, where Harris has a slight lead in the aggregate, that one looks like pretty much a dead heat. As you can see, going back to the Morning Consult poll that was ran from October 21st to October 30th, you've got two ties, Trump +3, Harris +2, Trump +1, Harris +1, Trump +1, Harris +2, another tie. That lends to Harris being up in the aggregate, but basically it's a dead heat. So that one could go either way. We'll just have to wait and see. In Michigan, Harris has a pretty safe lead there. You can see there were 4 ties recently, 2 Trump wins, but most of them have the state leaning just a little bit for Harris. Kamala's probably got that one in the bag, but you never know with how skewed polling has been in the past. Looking at Pennsylvania, it has Trump only up in the aggregate by 0.3, but Pennsylvania is looking fairly safe for Trump. As you can see, if you start in the November ones or the ones that went through November, you've got Trump +1, Trump +2, Trump +1, a tie, and Trump +1. So there are some that were in late October that show Harris winning, but for the most part, Pennsylvania is either a tie or it's leaning towards Trump. That seems to basically favor Trump. So looking back at Wisconsin, this is a state that Biden won by less than a point, even though polling showed him with a 6.7 point lead. So the polls were almost 6 points off there for Biden, of course. In Michigan, this is a state that Biden won by a little under 3 points, even though the polling at this time in 2020, so a day before the election in 2020, showed him up 5.1 points. So Michigan was off by about 2 points. And then Pennsylvania was a state that Biden won by about 1.2 points, even though polling showed Biden up 2.6. So that one was off by a little over a point. So assuming a similar skew to the left on all of these polls, Trump would win all three. All of them are within that considered margin of error. But what's good about this year, in contrast to 2020, is in 2020, all of the polls pretty much showed Biden winning almost all of the swing states. So we really had to bank on that secret Trump voter silent majority that tilted the 2016 election. 2016 showed Clinton up in all the polls and Trump won based on that silent majority, secret Trump voter, bias in the polls, however you want to look at it. In 2020, we had to bank on that. It did show up. All of the polls were skewed far left to where they actually ended up. Besides, I think Georgia was pretty accurate. But all of the other states, the actual results were far to the right of the polls. It just wasn't enough. Even though they were wrong, they weren't wrong enough that it flipped it towards Trump. This year, again, if that holds true, then Trump's going to win in a landslide. But luckily, this year we do not have to bank on that. As you can see here, if the polls are right in the no toss-up states map on the right, if the polls are right, Trump wins 287 to 251. So we don't have to hope for that silent majority again. We don't have to hope that the polls are skewed to the left. They just need to be right. As long as they aren't skewed to the right, which I think is extremely unlikely considering that's not been the trend recently, then we have a Trump victory. If they are skewed to the left, roughly to the level of how they were in 2020, it could be a pretty big landslide. As you can see in the map on the left, Minnesota, New Hampshire are both in the toss-up range. Those are supposed to be safe blue states. You can see on the right in the no toss-up version that they are leaning blue. If the polls are right, they go blue. If the polls are skewed to the left, though, Trump could win those two states. And there's some polling that seems to show that Virginia could minorly be in play. I don't think it's going to go red. The polls are roughly at about 4 or 5, but there have been polls more recently that are like Harris +2, Harris +2, Harris +1, Harris +3, a bunch of those polls. The main reason that the polling shows a +5 for Harris is because of 3 polls that were +8, +9, and +11. But a lot of the polls have been closer. Again, they have been still Harris in the lead there, but they're in the margin of error where if the polls are skewed left, Trump could even win Virginia. Like I said, I don't think it's going to happen. I do think that we could flip New Hampshire. I don't think Minnesota or Virginia are going to flip. But I do feel pretty confident about Nevada, Arizona, Georgia. I think we've got Pennsylvania in the bag. And even though the polls aren't showing it, I have heard a lot of good things about Wisconsin potentially going red. But again, it doesn't matter as long as just the polls are right for Pennsylvania, Georgia, Nevada, and Arizona, then Trump wins. And just for a little bit of fun at the end of the video, we can look at the national polling. This is for the national popular vote. That, of course, doesn't matter, doesn't mean anything, but it's a little fun to look at. As you can see, that is tilting slightly towards Trump. If we look at from the ones that started or ended in November, you've got Trump +2, Harris +3, tie, Trump +2, tie, tie. So that leads to Trump being slightly up in the aggregate. This is one where in this day in 2020, Biden was up 6.9. He ended up winning it by 4.5. So that seems to look good. Again, we don't have to hope for that same kind of skewing this year. We just need the polls to be right, which shows Trump slightly ahead, which if Trump wins the popular vote and the Electoral College, Wednesday is going to be a lot of fun, or whenever the election is called will be a lot of fun. We can at least spend the next 4 years where we don't have to hear about the national popular vote anymore. So things are looking positive. Still, obviously, if you haven't yet, go out and vote. I haven't yet. I'm going to vote tomorrow after I get off work. Hope for the best, pray for the best, and let's see what happens. See you all next time.